I didn't know what to do. So I do all the magic I had planned. I get out of a straitjacket at the end. I don't know what your straitjacket is, and I have more questions than answers, but I'm still standing despite all these dark chapters in my story. So whatever your straitjacket is, there's hope. Keep going. All the students are gone except for one girl. She's sitting by herself up in the bleachers. I'm like, what is she doing? She comes down to the floor. She starts walking towards me. She reaches into her pocket, puts her hand out in front of her with a closed fist. She takes a step forward, drops a razor blade into my hand, says, that's my straitjacket. I don't want it anymore, and you're the first person to ever make me feel like there's hope.
Every time I turn on my phone or the TV, it feels like the world's falling apart. The news is full of chaos, and if that's all you ever see, it's easy to believe everything's just getting worse. But that's not what I'm seeing behind the scenes. In real life, in our communities, I'm watching God move like I've never seen before. I've seen lives restored, churches growing, revival happening at business events, people stepping out in faith, and God giving dreams and visions, calling people to rise up and make a difference. And that's why I started Transforming Communities, because I want to show you what God is actually doing right now. I want to introduce you to my friends, people who are stepping up, taking risks, and transforming their cities for the kingdom. So if you're tired of bad news and you've been wondering if God still moves, He does, and these stories prove it. To support what we're doing and to hear more stories like this, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to be notified every time a new podcast drops, just click the bell icon next to the subscribe button. With that being said, let's jump into the Transforming Communities podcast. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Be Bold for Jesus. If you've ever felt the urge to live out your faith more boldly, to step up and make an impact in your workplace, your church, or your community, this conference is for you. The Be Bold for Jesus conference is coming back to Spokane, Washington. It's a weekend packed with worship, encouragement, and practical tools to help you live out your faith confidently. You'll hear from incredible speakers who are living examples of what it means to be bold for Christ. Tickets are on sale now at beboldforjesus.org. That's beboldforjesus.org. Grab your tickets today and let's be bold together. All right, guys, today's guest is someone who truly defies expectations. I sat down with Harris III at the Be Bold for Jesus conference. Harris is an illusionist, storyteller, and communicator whose work goes far beyond what you actually see on the stage. What stood out to me right away wasn't just what he does, but why he does it. Harris uses illusion as a doorway, a way to grab attention, lower defenses, and create moments where people are open to truth. His work challenges how we think about belief, honesty, and the stories we tell ourselves, both on stage and in real life. We talked about the craft beyond illusion, the responsibility that comes with influence, and how wonder can open conversations that facts alone often can't. Harris leads with creativity, intentionality, and integrity. He's thoughtful about his platform and serious about using it to connect with people in a meaningful way. I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation. So now on to my conversation with Harris III. Harris, man, good to meet you. This is the Transforming Communities podcast, and it's a special edition. We're partnering with Be Bold for Jesus. Be Bold for Jesus conference is phenomenal. It's awesome. There's 8,000 people here at the conference. If you're not here, you're going to want to be here next year. And we're just excited to do this. But the podcast is all about transforming communities and what we can do as the body of Christ to transform our cities. But none of that is possible without being bold. None of that is possible without your willingness to be bold for Christ. So the first question I have for you is, what is God asking you to be bold about right now in your life?
Oh, man, that's a great question. We missed the part where everyone submits questions in advance, so I can think about this. So you're putting me on the spot, to be honest.
Yeah.
What is God asking me to be bold and do? Probably build a network, a global network of storytellers who understand how to leverage the power of story to shift the underlying narratives that shape how people believe and behave in the world around them. Steve Jobs famously said the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. I had a few experiences in my life that led me to that idea. I'm uncovering just how powerful storytellers actually are. And so since then, I've kind of been on a mission to how do we network all of them together and have a conversation around how they wield that power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
So you have something interesting I was reading about you. So you actually started this really young. And how young were you when you started doing magic tricks? And also I'm curious, what's the difference between an illusionist and a magician, and what would you like me to introduce you as?
I've just called myself an illusionist all these years because it's easier for most people. In some
Yeah.
circles, people hear the word magic and they get confused and they're like, what is he really up to? And so illusionist, one, feels safer just to try to get ahead of any potential misunderstandings. But also, I think I'm trying to change people's perception of what magic is. Ironically, if we think magic is something that's performed by these people that we call magicians, but it's those people are only doing tricks, well, then that must mean that magic's not real. And magic is absolutely real. Magic is just this word that we use to describe things that we can't explain or seem to go beyond the words that we have to describe an experience. So people could absolutely leave a conference like this and someone's like, how was it? You're like, it was amazing. It was, it's like hard to put into words. That's when we usually resort to like, it was magical. There was like more going on than what we can see, smell, taste, touch, and hear. So for multiple reasons, I go with the illusionist so that I can remind people that what I'm doing isn't magic, but that feeling of wonder and awe that we have, you can experience that everywhere, not just in a magic show.
Man, I love that. What, how did you come up with, your stage name? And is it Harris III or is it Harris III? I mean, how do you come up with it?
I'm a third, and it feels weird in modern times, I guess. I don't know why. But, back in the day, I would speak at schools and students would come up and be like, are you royalty? Are you a prince or something? And I'm like, why are you asking me this? I didn't connect the dots. They're like, well, you have a Roman numeral after your name. But my dad and my grandfather both have the same name as I do. My legal name is Robert. No one ever called me that growing up. I had about 2 to 3 different nicknames. I grew up in a small town, very rural Southeast Tennessee. And those nicknames weren't names that I was going to carry into the rest of my career. And what's funny is like even early on in school, it kind of got split because people would see names on a clipboard, like at the beginning of class when doing roll call. And the teacher would be like, I have a, and then she would say my name. And then even people in my school were like, we're just going to stick with Harris. We're just going to call you Harris. And so Harris kind of stuck. And so outside of my immediate family, all my friends call me Harris. Everybody professionally refers to me as Harris. The third is certainly a formality.
That's awesome. When did you start doing this? And what age were you? And then also, when did you know this is what you were called to do and God was calling you to do this?
Yeah. I wish I had a story that, there was this clear moment where I was like, the heavens opened up. God sent some kind of messenger down and was like, I am calling you to go do this thing. And it just never felt like that, man. It was just, I guess we'll do this. And this makes the most sense to do this. It just kind of happened. And I think there is an act of obedience along the way, but there was never a specific moment where I had this huge epiphany or unveiling of a vision where I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to do the rest of my life. And the way it unfolded was I was 9 years old. I wasn't good at anything at all when I was 9. I grew up in a pretty poor family. My mom was a housekeeper on a college campus. My dad worked at a Lazy Boy furniture factory cutting out foam in this little small town. And I wasn't good at sports. Middle school was the first person cut from basketball tryouts. I wasn't even great at band, to be honest, and not to all of like the musicians out there, but it's like we weren't cool to be in band.
Playing a trumpet is challenging.
Well, it's like band wasn't cool. It was cool to be on the football team or the basketball team. So like I resort to band and now I'm not even good at that. So it's like no hope of me being the cool kid. So I'm just getting bullied constantly.
Yeah.
And then my dad is originally from St. Louis. And so I remember traveling up to St. Louis from Tennessee for the holidays. And there was a box under the tree that year. And it was the perfect size to hold a baseball glove, which is the thing that I really wanted that year. And I remember opening it up and feeling the sense of disappointment. It's like, dang it. It was like this little magic kit, this box of magic tricks. And it was not at all what I was interested in. But God knew what I needed, I suppose. And so I think that was one little breadcrumb, I guess, where it wasn't obvious. There was not a note in that box from God or my grandmother that said, you're going to grow up and become a professional magician turned storyteller who's going to build a global network of storytellers around the world. But I got bored one day, learned my first trick, performed it for my mom and dad. They were blown away. And now we have a lot of modern research around the neuroscience of awe and wonder and what it does to the human brain. Yeah. But at the time, all I knew is that there was something about their wonder and awe of me. Because up until that point, I'd never felt anyone look at me in awe in response to something that I had done. And I was like, I think I'm going to be into this. So I started traveling around Took 2 years. Finally got paid to do a magic show. Made $25 when I was 11 years old. And I got pretty hooked pretty fast.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What was the trick?
It's called the ball vase. It's like it comes in a lot of little magic kits. You take this little ball, put it inside of a little cup, and you cover it up with the lid, make the ball disappear. And then you cover it up again, the ball reappears. Super simple. I thought no one's going to be fooled by this. And my parents' minds were, I mean, in hindsight, who knows? Maybe they were just trying to encourage me. But they seemed very amazed at the time.
That's awesome. Does it feel weird when you know the trick and you know how it works, but you get the craziest reactions from people? Like, what's it like on the other side of it?
It certainly used to be. You get desensitized to that.
Really?
Right? Yeah. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Yeah.
If people are learning this for the first time from me here today.
Yeah.
But human beings are very easily deceived. And it's not because you aren't smart. Like, you're an intelligent human being, in fact, created in the image of God, right? So you have this divine imprint on you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is so easy for me to trick you. And it's not because you're dumb, and it's not because I'm really good at deception. It's because most of us don't walk around with this day-to-day awareness of how deception works. And so these different principles of deception that make magic tricks work, makes it possible to trick people, those are pretty universal. Yeah. And so, like, the only difference between what we would call a magician or a con man or a really great influential leader or a great salesperson, they're all using the same psychology, just with a different motive. And so my motive is to use the principles of influence and persuasion to entertain people, to make them wonder. I mean, now at this stage in my career, also to teach them about some of those principles and speak to them.
Yeah.
But a con man is simply using the same principles a magician would use to trick people for their own gain. A great leader is using the same principles of persuasion and influence to mobilize a group of people and take them somewhere really interesting. Yeah. So it just depends on how you want to use the craft.
Man, that's so interesting. You've done your illusion on some pretty cool stages. What's the coolest one that meant the most to you?
Probably a gym in the state of Michigan at a school.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, you get desensitized to the platforms that you're on, like the size of the crowd over time. You're just like, cool. And this isn't always healthy, but you're like, all right, I'm at another conference with 5,000 people or 10,000 people or whatever. Yeah. And so it becomes less about how many people are in the room or how cool the stage is, and more about the meaningful interactions with the people in the audience. And so I was in my mid-20s. I'd made $1 million doing magic by 21, left my little small town in Tennessee, moved to the big city of Nashville, which was not that big at the time.
Hold on. We're going to pause, dude. You made $1 million by 21?
Yep.
How did you do that?
Magic shows, man. Yeah. Just touring full time, doing like 150 shows a year, doing magic. I still remember sitting down with my parents. I was about 14, 15 years old, and we were doing taxes. Or they were doing taxes, and I was having to participate.
And you were in shock of what.
Well, my parents were really good at like, they had made me book my own shows, send out my own contracts. So like, if the phone rang at our house, because I mean, there was no cell phones back then, so it was like, I'm calling to book the magician to do a magic show at my kid's birthday party or my church Sunday school class, whatever it was. And so they would be like, hold please, and I would answer the phone. I would have to negotiate the fee. And so at tax time, I remember sitting there, and they were basically like, you made 6 figures this last year. That's more money than we had ever made combined, they told me. And I remember thinking like, well, how much money do you guys make? I'd never thought about money like that before. And so we do that at 14, 15. By 16, I was performing on cruise ships and touring professionally, and had dropped out of public high school to go on the road full time. So $21 million. And that sounds cool, but by 22, I was bankrupt. And so long story short, when you move to the city and your identity's wrapped up in what people think about you, the easiest way to explain it is that somewhere along the way, my vocation as an illusionist basically became my lifestyle. And so my identity was wrapped up in trying to get people to like me, because since I was a little kid, I struggled to get people to like me and find acceptance. Yeah. And so from this deep place of insecurity and desperate to experience some form of love and belonging, I just thought, well, I'm going to build a house in the right spot in a cool neighborhood in a wealthy suburb, and I'm going to hang out with all my celebrity friends and be seen wearing the right jeans and driving the right expensive car. And it doesn't matter how much money you make, man. When you're living for the illusion of more, and when you become addicted to the approval of others, it feels like you're dying by their rejection.
Yeah.
And so the show could never stop because I didn't want the applause to stop. And so whether it was wearing the right clothes, being at the right party, living in the right house, or doing the right magic show on the right stage, it was all about how do I get applause? And so you just kind of keep having to feed that dopamine hit. And so, I wasted $1 million and then some, was bankrupt by 22. And then I found myself in that school that I was telling you about, that gym. I didn't really want to be there that day. At the time, I didn't know what else to do with my life other than magic because it's all I'd known since I was a kid. And the model was basically we would do these evening shows in these nicer venues. And then during the day, school leaders would let us come in and do magic for the kids, sometimes just in the cafeteria to try to sell tickets, sometimes in the form of some sort of a school assembly program where the whole school would come together. And I remember walking into this gym. I didn't have much time with the principal, but just very, very briefly, like I'm standing on the gym floor. There's 1,000 kids in the bleachers. He's like, hey, man, I just read your bio. You've done some very cool stuff and been all over the world by a young age. Don't just do magic tricks for these kids. Like, that's cool. They'll like it. But tell them who you are. Like, let them hear your story. Tell your story. And before I could interrupt him and be like, whoa, I'm not like some kind of motivational speaker. I don't know what you're asking me to do. I'm just a magician. Before I could be like, I'm just a magician, he like taps me on the back. He's like, you've got this. And then goes out and introduces me. And I didn't know what to do. So I do all the magic I had planned. I get out of a straitjacket at the end. A couple of football players put me in a straitjacket. I get out a la Harry Houdini. And I didn't know what to do. And I still remember looking over, and he was like leaned up against the sidewall of the gym. And he's like, do that thing I told you, right? Like, do the whole story thing. And so I didn't know what to do. I was staring at the straitjacket in my hand, and all I could think about in that moment connected to my story was all the straitjackets, from abuse in my childhood by a family friend, addiction as a teenager, because I had so much access to so much stuff traveling around the world by myself from a very young age, the addiction to the approval of other people, which led to making $1 million, but then also losing $1 million. Now this mountain of debt that I'd racked up after selling everything I own, just straitjacket after straitjacket, and said, I don't know what your straitjacket is, and I have more questions than answers. I know people like me are supposed to come to your school and tell you all the answers. I'm just trying to figure life out, but I'm still standing despite all these dark chapters in my story. So whatever your straitjacket is, there's hope. Keep going. And I don't know if you've ever given a bad talk. Probably not. You probably give like perfect talks.
Are you kidding me? Anybody that's ever done any kind of speech has tanked it before.
Totally. And it might sound like a cool illustration now. Like, oh, I see what you did. The straitjacket and like keep going.
Yeah.
But my inner critic was waging war on my heart. I was like, what were you doing? You should have stuck to the script. What was that? You're just a magician, man. And everybody leaves. The principal didn't even come over and say anything. He just like kind of waved and thumbed up and went back to work.
Was it the principal was the one that told you what he expected of you?
Yeah. And so I'm packing up my stuff. All the students are gone except for one girl. She's sitting by herself up in the bleachers. I'm like, what is she doing? She walks down, and like the metal bleachers, you hear like the steps, right? She comes down to the floor. She starts walking towards me. She's like, hey, Mr. Harris, I have something for you. And I was like, okay. She reaches into her pocket, puts her hand out in front of her with a closed fist. I didn't know what to do, so I just sort of cupped my hands out in front of her. She takes a step forward, drops a razor blade into my hand, says, that's my straitjacket. I don't want it anymore, and you're the first person to ever make me feel like there's hope. And then she turns and walks away. And in that moment, never even got her name. I remember seeing the scars on her wrist because she was wearing this hoodie, and I remember her sleeves kind of coming up as she put her hands in her pockets. And dude, what made me think of this story was you asking, what's the coolest stage I've ever been on or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And that day I realized a few things. One, there was this shift because when you're a professional magician or illusionist, when you interact with audience members afterwards, you have like the autographs and the selfies, but more than anything else, people are like, how'd you do that magic trick?
Sure.
How'd you do that magic trick? How'd you do that magic trick?
Yeah.
And she didn't care about the magic tricks. It was just like, hey, something you just said connected and resonated with me and gave me hope so much that I'm ready to take this thing that I carry with me everywhere I go, and I want to give it away to you. And so it was the most meaningful exchange I'd ever had with an audience
Yeah,
member.
I can only imagine, and
And
probably gave you crazy purpose for
Yes,
life
yes,
and
bingo.
your show.
Yeah, it was like, okay, forget money. Somehow I got to start pursuing meaning.
Yeah.
And that became the catalyst for quite a few things. You asked me earlier, like, what is this bold thing that God called me to? And if you would have asked me that when I was 13 years old, I guess I would have said magic tricks. I didn't have the wisdom to kind of talk about it in a nuanced way of like, I don't know if this is my calling, but it feels right for now, so let's keep doing it. But in that moment, it was like, this is not about the magic. There's something deeper that's going on here that is truly magical in nature. But
Yeah.
God's doing something bigger than just my ability to entertain people with tricks. So I went down the rabbit hole of research to try to understand, like, why would someone do that to themselves? Because I have some pretty dark chapters in my own story in my childhood, but never thought of self-harm, never was connected to self-harm. No friend that I was connected to or family member ever committed suicide when I was younger. And so that was all the way in my 20s, the first time I'd ever interacted so personally with someone who was hurting themselves and wanted to understand. And that's when I went down the rabbit hole and realized, wow, these beliefs that we have, they quite literally shape the perception of ourselves that we see even in the mirror. That it's more true to say that believing is seeing than to say that seeing is believing. Because when you do a magic trick, it always proves that what you see is not always what you get. And yet we live as if seeing is believing. Like we walk around going, I'll believe it when I see it.
Right.
So we equate the ability to see something with our willingness to believe in it. But it's actually more true because we're so easily deceived to recognize that these beliefs that we walk around with are in very real time shaping our perception in the world around us. They're informing what we see. And because of that, she had believed some stories that weren't true about herself. And that was shaping the way she saw herself, which then led her to harm herself. So I thought, well, where are these beliefs coming from? Realized they were narratives. Where are the narratives coming from? Storytellers,
Right.
arts and entertainment, marketing and advertising. We take in 4,000 to 5,000 messages and ads per day, depending on how media saturated we are and how much screen time we spend.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's as many as 10,000 messages per day.
Man, that's so crazy.
That's
to
a
think
lot.
about.
And so
Yeah.
I thought, well, gosh, if storytellers are this powerful, then instead of me just going around telling stories while performing magic tricks, I can only reach so many people per year. What if we mobilized a global community of storytellers to help them understand the power of the stories they tell to shift narratives that drive belief and behavior? So I would say that's my bold calling, which took a long time to get to, but
Dude,
that's my
I
answer
love
to
it,
your
though.
first question.
That is so powerful, and I and there's so much in there. I wish we had like 2 hours to talk through this because you've got addiction
Yeah.
that God got you through.
Mm-hmm.
You've got. I remember the day. See, for me, I grew up in a family that did ministry,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the one that like walked away from my faith.
Sure.
And then I had a crazy dream where God came and spoke to me, and I came back, and so I had this feeling my whole life of like, I know you're calling me into ministry, but I had all this pressure I put on myself. Like I can't
Mm-hmm.
fail. Like my family's been doing ministry in Spokane and for 50 years. I can't screw up. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I started the ministry became my identity.
Yeah.
So I didn't know who I was growing up. So my identity was like, am I a stoner? Am I a fighter? Am I an athlete?
Yeah.
I was always jumping around to groups because I didn't know who I was. And then
Yeah.
my identity became, this is my identity. And I remember the day where I just had to like, God was like, no, your identity is you're a son of mine.
Yeah.
And if I ask you to give it up, would you be willing to give it up?
Yeah.
Are you still okay? Like, and I remember those days for all of us, I think of like, what is your identity? And I think for you to wrestle through that and come out the other side, even at 22, pretty incredible, man,
Yeah.
and to have purpose behind what you do now, is so cool. What is your, what's your favorite illusion to do?
This episode is brought to you by Helping Captives. You know, it's crazy how many people don't realize that human trafficking isn't just somewhere else. It happens right here in our own communities. Helping Captives is a faith-based anti-trafficking organization that exists to provide freedom, hope, and opportunity to survivors of sex trafficking across the United States. They do this through their different services such as emergency and stabilization, 24/7 around-the-clock care, professional counseling, and much more. If you're a survivor of sex trafficking and need help, or you're wanting to support a survivor's journey, take the first step at helpingcaptives.org. That's helpingcaptives.org.
know that I have a favorite because again, these days,
You don't have like a go-to. I'm hanging out with the buddies, and I just gonna
no,
get the reaction.
no. I
Okay.
mean, magic is such a small part of my life now in my 40s. And yet it's the thing that I'm known for, which feels so ironic, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, meet Harris. Did you know he's been doing magic tricks for 30 years and is like, I've done magic for over 2 million people, over 40 countries, all 50 states, all 6 continents that people live on.
Wow.
I've performed or spoken live at over 3,000 events. And even in like the
Do you
professional.
own like a RV company? How do you? what, what-
No, but like even among people who do what I do for a living, whether they do magic or not, they just travel and speak. Like 3,000 events is a lot, especially by your mid 40s.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of reps. And yet, my favorite magic trick is any magic trick that leads to a conversation around something deeper because magic is so shallow at its surface. When people experience it, immediately takes them to something that's akin to like a riddle they're supposed to solve or like a puzzle that they're trying to figure out. And so if I'm doing a card trick, that can be my favorite if it's leading to a conversation with you about wondering about deeper truths or how easy it is to be deceived or why we're so uncomfortable with mystery right now and why that has to do with an entire generation of people who can't believe in God because he can't be explained in a 30-second YouTube video. So it's these deeper philosophical questions about the meaning of life and what shapes our identities and these stories that we tell ourselves that we're not even conscious of.
Yeah.
Any magic trick that unlocks that. So my favorite magic trick tends to change pretty rapidly depending on
Okay.
what the latest conversation is that's happening in culture and how that trick can lead to that.
Okay. That makes
Yeah.
sense to me, actually. What one of the things I thought was interesting is there's some people out there that, you know, I don't necessarily get really excited when I meet a celebrity. It's not, I don't know, it's not necessarily in my nature because I
Sure.
just see them like as human beings.
Same.
But I would like to meet the Dude Perfect guys. I think they're pretty dope. And I saw that you did something with them. What was that like?
Oh, dude, they're great guys. Real deal. Yeah. There's I have a client in Dallas that brings me in pretty regularly, and they always show up at those events and hang out backstage, and they love magic. And I remember we had a mutual friend, and the next time I was there, one of the guys texted me, got my number from our friend. He's like, dude, you're coming to Dallas for this event. You should swing by our studio. Like, let's film something. And I was just like, yeah, maybe. And then my buddy was like, hey, Colby said he invited you to come by and like you're trying to work it out, but it may not happen. He's like, you absolutely need to find a way to do that.
Right.
And I was just like, really? It's like they have some kind of YouTube thing. And so like I had no idea. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll prioritize it. And so I go and I show up at their quote unquote studio, and dude, they own a massive gym. It's like this big compound.
Yeah.
And I
you
walk
have no
in.
idea.
The moment I arrive, there's just people with cameras everywhere. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know this. And so then I look them up and it's massive. Yeah.
So you were friends with them and you didn't even know who they are.
Correct.
That
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
funny to me.
And what's interesting is like now, every now and then, like if you speak at a corporate event or a conference like this that people might travel in for,
Yeah.
you might be on a flight with someone the next morning and they're like, oh, I saw you yesterday. You spoke at the conference. Great job. And so you get recognized from time to time. Or in Nashville, you're with your family at the mall and someone's visiting and they're like, you came to our town when you were blah, blah, blah. These days, if I step onto an elevator at a hotel or I'm somewhere and I can tell someone recognizes me, they're like, you're the magician on Dude Perfect. And it always comes back to Dude Perfect. But dude, they are the real deal.
They got you into the Gen Z crowd.
They're amazing guys.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And
Yeah,
the
they just
parents
seem
of the Gen Z
super
crowd.
cool. Yeah. That's amazing, man. Yeah. They
Yeah.
seem so cool. They look like it would just be so fun
Yes.
to do some kind of collab with them. What, if you could perform any illusion with a Bible character, who would you do it with and what would it be?
I mean, how could you not say Jesus? The other thing would be, no one's ever asked me that either. You have great questions. I think the story with Moses and Pharaoh is really fascinating from the perspective of a magician, because a lot of people see that and they're just like, because there's lots of debates about whether magic is evil and that what I do is linked in with like dark arts or sorcery or
Do you
whatever.
have to say something up front about that?
It's a lot of church environments, right? Yeah.
Like, just so you know, I'm not a witch.
I'm not an illusion. And then some people still think, well, it's still deceptive, and you're working with things that we should just stay away from. And yet the people who are scared of it are the very people that they could probably get a lot of value with understanding the perspective on illusions and deception from the perspective of someone who is actually an expert in deception, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people, I think, give Satan a lot more credit and power than he deserves. Like in the Bible, throughout Scripture, it's basically like liar, deceiver, father of lies. No different than using the principles of deception. And even in Revelation, we hear John describing these things that are going to happen in these end times, and yet the entire thing is a narrative of a vision that he saw. It's not an interpretation of how it's all happening. It's just that he's seeing it. And so if you come watch me do a magic show, you will see supernatural, magical feats because that's what your eyes see. And yet behind the scenes, what you're missing is their simple explanations. So I don't know that Satan needs this massive amount of supernatural power to accomplish stealing, killing, and destroying. He just has to be really good at deceiving people. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a lot for the church to learn from the perspective of a magician. And so where that question takes me is to that story where Moses and Pharaoh are like battling it with it. He's like, Moses comes in and throws a staff down and it turns into a snake. And then eats up all the other snakes because the Pharaoh he goes and gets these court magicians to come in. Yeah. And essentially they're trying to duplicate these magic tricks. And most Christians would say, oh, it's like Satan versus God. And I'm like, no, it's magicians versus God. Yeah. It's deception versus like genuine miraculous feats. Because eventually it was the magicians who turned to Pharaoh and they were like, yo, like our skills only take us so far. We can't do this stuff. This is actually the hand of God. So I think like Moses would be pretty cool to do magic for because he has so much exposure to being like the performer of something that resembles a magic show.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. One of the things we were talking about before we came on the show that I connected with is it seems like you really love and care about your family.
Yeah.
And I love just talking to you because if you have an opportunity to drive for 8 hours or hop on a quick plane ride, you're going to drive just so you can hang out with your kids and your family and take them to a show.
Yes.
How much does family mean to you?
Oh, dude, they're everything. And it's not just my mandate as a dad to love my kids well and to lead well. They also completely transformed my life. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now in this moment without the perspective that they've given me. So much of my focus has been helping people understand these different principles of deception and how we get led to and tricked into believing the things that we believe. But there's another whole part of that conversation that has resulted as a result of becoming a dad. And that is that part of the reason we don't think critically and we're easy to deceive is because we settle so easily for counterfeit versions of what's real. And I think that has to do with how wounded our wonder has been as, you could just say, a species, like human beings in general, as a result of the age we live in. We've just been sort of psychologically conditioned by our phones to think that there's an abundance of certainty, that everything can be explained. And so if you don't understand how a magic trick works, you just Google it, right? Back in the old days, people would leave my shows and go home and Google it at night. Now they can literally pull out their phones before the magic trick is even over. Yeah. And they're like, how did he make the table levitate? How did he read my mind with an imaginary deck of cards, right? And so that discomfort that we have with mystery and wonder, because wonder feels so threatening and disruptive, we don't like the way that feels. And yet 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, that was just another Tuesday, right? Wow. Yeah. You walk outside and look up and you're like, I don't know what constellation that is. That there weren't a bunch of people at NASA labeling all this stuff and taking pictures of it to help us understand it. And so I think there was just a comfort level with uncertainty, the ability to choose faith. Like a lot of people think faith and certainty are they're not the same thing. I have faith without my questions being answered because God is mysterious. The Bible can be absolute and fully inspired by God and still leave me with questions. And that doesn't negate the fact that it's absolute truth and inspired scripture, right? Yeah. So there's this interesting thing about kids that allow you to stir that sense of childlike wonder that Jesus quite literally said we have to have. Otherwise, we can't even enter the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And we're so fast to grow up, which is okay. Paul said, put away childish things, right? So we're supposed to grow in wisdom and maturity and truth. But then when the disciples ask Jesus, who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, he goes and gets a kid, probably pulls them into some sort of circle and says, this little kid. So he answers their question, this kid's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Then he takes it a step further and answers a question they didn't even ask, which was, in fact, unless you even have the mind of a child, you will never even enter the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
It is nearly impossible for a grown-up to have the mind of a child unless we can get back to that sense of wonder where we are able to believe without needing to see. But if we're walking around saying, I'll believe in it when I see it,
yeah,
wonder is quite literally this physiological state that we are wired for. We now have the science and research to support it from UC Berkeley. But like our bodies are wired for wonder, and it is this state that gives us permission to believe more easily, even if we have yet to see. So, dude, my kids have changed my life. I owe them everything.
So fire, dude. I just love the fact that you're willing to like travel with them. I think for me, as I'm traveling more and doing ministry, it's something we're looking at. We're even like having our kids kind of be homeschooled and doing co-ops so they can travel with me. Because I don't, it's hard when you're traveling a lot, and I don't want to lose my family in the midst of it. But, you know, as we're wrapping up, I just have the last question I'm curious about is what would be one thing if a young Harris was watching this show that you'd want to tell him?
One of my favorite quotes is not even a Bible verse. So I just want to like say this with an asterisk and be like, I get that the holy word of God is essential, but I know you have lots of guests that all the time talk about different ways of interpreting our experience in the world and growing our faith by reading the Bible. There was a psychologist named Carl Jung that most people have heard of. He has this famous idea.
Yeah, because of Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, okay. And he said, unless we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And there's so much wisdom baked into that idea. C.S. Lewis said that we are far too easily pleased. And he said that we're like ignorant children making mud pies in a slum because we cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at sea. We are far too easily pleased. So understand that sometimes we think we're walking around with a pocket full, like a wallet packed full of cash. But 2 blocks earlier, a pickpocket already picked our pockets clean and put a fake wallet back in our pocket. And then when we see the little sign that says, beware pickpockets in the area, we tap our pockets and we're like, oh, I'm good. Not realizing that what you have is actually a counterfeit version of what's real. And so part of the reason it's so easy to be deceived is not because we take truth from people. It's that the world takes truth from people and replaces it with a counterfeit. And so we're all walking around with these stories, these narratives. Many of them aren't true. They're broken. But we're not even consciously aware of them because we don't do the work, as Carl Jung said, to make the unconscious conscious. We settle. We become far too easily pleased. And then we get to the end of our life and we look back and we call it fate. And even Christians are guilty of looking at fate, giving credit to God, going, that's just the story he wrote for me. Wow. And the whole time God was trying to write a different story through your life. You just weren't willing to do the work to think critically, to examine yourself, to make the unconscious conscious, to really pay attention to the stories you're telling yourself about who you are, about who God is, but to really engage on a deeper level and ask God to reveal that truth to you.
Man,
and if the truth can set us free, what does that imply?
Yeah.
It implies that lies, deception, counterfeits, illusions can trap and entangle us. So we have to do the work to not just listen to what's true. Otherwise, we will interpret all that truth through the context of the counterfeits and the lies that already exist. And that's dangerous. So you've got to unpack that stuff and rid your life of anything that's deceptive to make space for the story that's more real and true and good.
Man, thank you so much for that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Harris, it's been awesome having you on the show, man. That was incredible. Your ability to storytell and to just made this a really easy interview and just ask you a question and you're able to unpack and storytell. And I think, I just pray that God just continue to bless you as you do this. Thank you. I'm so happy to see that I think the church to see like, hey, there's purpose behind what you're doing and you're reaching people in arts and entertainment, people that might not ever experience or hear anything about God in different areas, outside the church. And so I just want to encourage you to keep rocking it, man. That's awesome. It's so fun to see just special gifts that God gives people. And, as we wrap up, do you have anything that you'd like? How can people follow you? Anything you'd like to, books or anything you'd like to plug before we call it a day?
My last book was called The Wonder Switch. It's available everywhere books are sold. My next book is called Start with Wow. Comes out in 2026. It's all about that neuroscience of awe and wonder, what that has to do with the way we see the world, and kind of intersects with the ability to change the story. So whether you're a parent trying to figure out how do I raise my kids and maintain that sense of wonder, you're an adult leading a team of people, trying to figure out how do I create a culture of wonder within my organization. You're a believer, follower of Jesus out there going, how do I create space in my faith for wonder and mystery? I think those books will help you out. You can learn more at harristhe3rd.com.
harristhe3rd.com. Awesome. What's your Instagram?
Harris III, Harris III, like the Roman numeral 3. I respond to all my DMs at some point. So even if it's not instant, if you send me a DM or you email me through the website, you get a reply from me. That's me.
Awesome.
No bots or AI or assistants in there pretending to be me. It's all me.
That's awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, man. Yeah, my pleasure.
I hope you really enjoyed this episode. If you want to hear more episodes like this, please subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell. Your subscription helps us reach way more people with these messages. If you would like to come join us at the next Be Bold for Jesus conference, please go to BeboldForJesus.com. You're going to hear from leaders like Dallas Jenkins from The Chosen, Greg Laurie, Ray Comfort, and many others boldly living out their faith in today's culture. Again, that's BeboldForJesus.com to get your tickets. Bring your family, bring your friends, and come be encouraged. We can't wait to see you there.